So by far, the question I got the most from some of my Govee videos is if you can do a Y connection or three-way split on their permanent outdoor lights, and since I'm not entirely sure, let's test things out to see what happens. Now the first thing I'm going to do is plug in 6 segments to make sure they're all still working. You'll notice these are some of the same ones I used in the cutting, splicing, and waterproofing video from a few months ago, and everything appears to still be working great. So there's a lot of reasons why you might want to have some lights branch off from the main strip, and to test this out, I'm first going to remove the last 2 segments. Now let's say after the first 2 lights in the 4th segment is where you want to have some lights split off from the main string. Make sure you have everything unplugged before you make the cut. Next, I'm going to go ahead and separate the wires and strip them back. I'm then going to take a 3-slot Wago connector and get everything reconnected, making sure to match up the wires correctly. And here's where I'm going to be introducing some lights that I'm going to try splicing into the run. This was a leftover segment I had from previous experimenting, and I still believe it has 8 lights left. I'll strip back the wires and get them connected to the same Wago, making sure that the wires again are all going to the correct spot. I'll plug things back in, and as you can see, all the lights are working perfectly. Next, I'm going to plug in another segment on the main run to see if that affects anything, and thankfully, everything is still looking good. I'm then going to plug in the last one to get back to our initial 6 full segments plus our additional spliced in lights, and we're still in business as all the pixels are working with no flickering or drop in brightness along the run. Now at this point, I was curious to see what would happen if I tried splicing in another string of lights at the same spot as the other. For this, I'm first going to replace their 3-slot Wago connectors with their 5-slot version. Once this is done, I'm going to take another string I had laying around, and this one I think has the full 12 lights left, and get it hooked up at the same spot. I know it might be tricky to follow with all the wires, but we have our main run going on up here, and off of that I now have these 2 separate splices. The first one we did that has the 8 lights, and the second one that we just did that has 12. And again, everything's working great with no flickering lights or loss of brightness. Now before moving on, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, Aura. So this is me signing up for their free 14-day trial, and during this setup process, one of the many things they do is scan the internet for data brokers that have your personal information. These data brokers then make a fortune selling your information to spammers, scammers, and other entities that want to know more about you. Now, Aura was able to find 30 such instances of my personal information being in the hands of these companies. Then, with one click, Aura sends out a notice to have my information removed from their systems, which they are legally required to do when asked. Their all-in-one platform offers antivirus protection, credit monitoring, credit lock, financial transaction alerts, secure VPN, identity protection, parental controls, 24/7 US-based customer service, and much, much more. I'll leave a link in the description for you to start your own free 14-day trial, so please make sure to check them out. Thank you all so much, and now back to the video. So the last thing I want to try is to see what happens if I split everything right at the beginning, after the controller, but before the first LED. For this, I'm going to begin by unplugging the last 3 segments. Then I'll basically be doing the same thing I just went over, but this time I'll be cutting the strip right before the very first LED on the first segment like I'm doing here. Next, I'll be using 3-slot Wago pieces to reconnect the strings back together. And finally, I need to take the other 3 segments that I disconnected in the previous step and attach the beginning of those lights to the WAGOs. Now we do have a mess of wires, but I'll try to separate them so you can see how right at the beginning we have everything split going in 2 different directions. The top run has 3 full segments connected, and the bottom also has 3 full segments, plus both of the splices we made in our previous example are still attached. And just like you'd hope to see when the data is being split, the top and bottom parts are doing the same thing at the same time. So I hope this was somewhat easy to follow, and I hope it at least answered some of your questions out there on if this could be done. Now obviously every scenario is going to be unique to your particular install, but it is nice to know that it's certainly possible to do. Thank you all for watching, and as always, I hope you have a blessed day.